Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Solid Gold Scripture Journals. I'm Marcy. I'm so glad you're here as we study our scriptures. Today we're going to study in Come Follow Me, Mosiah 18 to 24. We have entered into a covenant with him. I am teaching this week in seminary. I teach every other week. And I have just been really confused about the timeline in Mosiah. And I've read it before, I've taught it before. I'm not sure why it's so challenging this time, but it is. So I went on a blog called Book of Mormon Study Notes, and I'm going to link this in the description because the Book of Mosiah is not written in chronological order, so it's hard to keep track. So here we have a little timeline, how to keep track, which I will study more this week. But, for example, King Benjamin's sermon, which is written at the beginning of the Book of Mosiah, actually doesn't happen timeline-wise till almost the end of Mosiah. So this is like real confusing. So I think what I'm going to do today, and as I prepare for this week, is study a principle that I think is very important. So we are here. This is the account of Alma and his people, and he takes them to the waters of Mormon and he baptizes them and they make a covenant with God, and that is great. And then we have the people of Limhi and the people of Alma and how they have heavy burdens and they are in bondage and how they get out of their bondage there. But the thing I really wanted to study today and to really focus on in my week of seminary is this idea here. I can trust the Lord. So this is like a little bit unusual. I'm just kind of going to leave this. I'm going to say a prayer as I begin my study, and then let's dive in. I often forget to pray, so if I remember to remind you, I think we're off to a great start here. Looking here, it says, I can trust the Lord, and it's just a few verses at the end of Mosiah. So even though they had repented of their sins, Alma and his people still found themselves in bondage. Their experience shows that trusting the Lord and living our covenants doesn't always take away our challenges, but it does help us overcome them. And I think this is really important as I'm teaching young people. Sometimes we do our best and we still have those challenges. As you read Mosiah 23 and 24, note words and phrases that can help you learn to trust the Lord regardless of your circumstances. And then also, there's a talk by Elder Bednar called Bear Up Their Burdens with Ease, which I think I may study this week. But for today, this is what I'm going to do here. There's only one thing. I guess I'll put a little check box and I'll check it off when I'm done. But for now, I shall set up my journal. I'm going to read the scriptures here and take my marking pen. And as I find a phrase or words that help me learn to trust in the Lord regardless of my circumstances, I will mark them. So here we are in Mosiah chapter 23. I'm a little confused. I have found the book of Mosiah really confusing this time around. So I know what I need to do tomorrow is go through and reread the book of Mosiah. And I'm going to take this little chart here that I found on the internet, and I'm going to figure out in my mind what's going on, what is the timeline of the book of Mosiah. But I'm not going to let that bog me down today. Today, I'm looking for principles. I'm looking here. How can I trust in the Lord regardless of my circumstances? when you are having a bad time, how can you trust in the Lord? And that's what we're looking for here. So in chapter 23, the people of Alma were chastened. The Lord chastened them. He was trying them. This was a trial about their patience and their faith. I had a seminary student bear her testimony a couple weeks ago, and she said, and I wrote it down, but I don't want to show you her name, so I'm just going to read it here. She said, I have had trials that have solidified my testimony. This is a grade 9 student. So we get these trials, we become chastened, we have to exercise patience and faith, but that will build up our testimonies, and that is why that is done. Then it says in verse 22, when we trust in him, we will be lifted up at the last day. So that is something to look forward to. It still feels pretty bad today. Verse 23, they were in bondage and no one could deliver them but the Lord their God. And sometimes that's what it is. We are not strong enough to deliver ourselves. We have to be delivered by the Lord. And then in verse 24, he did deliver them and they rejoiced. Let's go down to chapter 24. It said, so great were their afflictions that they began to cry mightily to God. When do we really trust in the Lord and pray to the Lord? Well, that's when we are in trials. And that's what happened here. And they said, if you pray out loud, we're going to kill you. So they just poured out their hearts to God. We don't always have to do it vocally. I think that's good to remember. Then the Lord said, lift up your heads and be of good comfort, because you have made a covenant with me and you will get out of bondage. So sometimes this is literal, sometimes this is just spiritual, but we have covenanted with the Lord and he will ease the burdens that are put upon our shoulders. The people of Alma submitted cheerfully with all patience to the will of the Lord, and he did deliver them from bondage. That is a great story, and I think we can really liken it to our lives. So what I'm going to do is make note of all those little, of all those words and phrases that I find helpful. All of these great points have really led me to liken these scriptures to my life. And the thing I can see here is that these burdens and problems that we all experience through our life, they are for our learning. We will gain a stronger testimony faster than anything else by going through these burdens and these trials in our lives. I just wrote down that I will learn more by going through trials. My testimony will grow and my relationship with God will strengthen. I'm not sure if that's a real sentence, but that's how I feel about it today. I think this is a lot of food for thought, especially if you're in the midst of a trial. So I'm going to leave this with you today. I want you to know that I'm going to go back and do all the other questions this week on other days. You just can't do it all in one day. It's hard to cover it. It's hard to understand everything, but that's okay, because we get these principles that we can put into our lives, and that's really the most important thing. So I hope that you find what you need as you study your scriptures this week, and I will see you next time. Bye.